Hi everybody, welcome to another Yarn Scrap Friday and our last Halloween special, and this week we are going to be making some little mini witches hats. Okay, so for our little mini witches hat, obviously we're going to be using some black yarn, which doesn't show up too well on camera. So I'm going to be substituting the black yarn just for this video for some grey yarn, just so that you can see the stitches a bit clearer. But normally we would be using some black yarn, and you're going to be needing a tiny little bit of purple yarn and a little bit of yellow yarn as well for the buckle. And this is all made with a DK light worsted weight yarn. That's a yarn weight of 3, but you can use pretty much any yarn you like. And with that we are going to be using, let's put our little hat down, we're going to be using a 3mm crochet hook, and you're also going to need a pair of scissors and a yarn needle as well, yarn or tapestry needle. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so we're going to be taking our grey yarn, but obviously you would be substituting this for the black yarn. And the first thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be working the single crochet, this is in US terminology, the single crochet foundation stitch. So it's a little bit different to just chaining at the beginning, but it's not too complicated, so hopefully you can have a go. And the reason we're using the foundation stitch is because we want to create something that has stitches both sides. All will become clear. So the first thing we're going to do though is we are going to do our little slip knot, and we're going to chain 2, just chain 2 to begin, 1 and 2. Okay, and we're not going to count that as a stitch or anything like that. What we're going to do now is we're going to work our first single crochet foundation stitch, and we need to make 20 of these. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our hook into our first chain. Just put your hook into the first chain like so, and keeping it fairly loose, we're going to bring the yarn through the first chain. Okay, so you get 2 loops on your hook. Then what we're going to do is we're going to yarn over and create the foundation chain, as it were, as if you were chaining normally. And to do that, we yarn over and just bring the yarn through the first loop. Okay, just for the first loop. And that creates on the left hand side our what would have been our little foundation chain. Then we're going to do our single crochet. So we're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. And there's our single crochet. Okay, so you ended up with a foundation chain and a single crochet, and that's our first single crochet foundation stitch. And it means we get a stitch this side and a stitch this side, which is, we're going to need that. To make the next one, we're not going to go back into our first chain, we're actually going to go into this stitch foundation chain that we created. So putting your hook under both bits of yarn, this little sort of V shape of a chain we just created. Okay, putting it under both bits of yarn there, so not into your first chain, we're going under these 2 bits of yarn. We're going to do exactly the same thing again for the next one. So bring the yarn through that foundation chain, keep it fairly loose because that helps to see the foundation chain. We yarn over, pull through the first loop only to create our second foundation chain, see that little upside down V shape? Then we do our single crochet, so we yarn over, pull through both loops, and that's our second single crochet foundation stitch. Then the next one we're going to go into this second foundation chain that we created, so put our hook under there, going under both bits of yarn like so. Again, bring the yarn through a little upside down V. You can see the chains started to be created. Do the same thing again, we yarn over, pull for the first loop only so we get our foundation chain we can work into, like so. Then we do our single crochet, yarn over, pull through both loops. Okay, and to make sure you're working into the right bit, you should have a stitch here on the right hand side, then you should have a horizontal bar which we ignore, and then after that little sort of slightly diagonal bar really, you should then have your foundation chain. That's what we want to work into. So skip this little, don't work into this horizontal bar by accident. You need to skip that and find this foundation chain on the left hand side, and just keep repeating this method until you've done it 20 times. So bring the yarn through the foundation chain, bring it up, keep it quite loose because that'll help you see it the next time. Yarn over, pull through that first loop only to create your next foundation chain. Yarn over, pull through both loops to do your single crochet. And as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 foundation chains now. Okay, so we're not counting these 2 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4. So keep repeating that until you've got 20 single crochet foundation stitches. Okay, just working into this foundation chain at the side. So the next one. Bring the yarn through. Bring it up so you get a nice loose stitch. Yarn over, pull for the first loop only. It's important to remember that because you need to create your foundation chain. Then yarn over, pull through both loops to do your single crochet. Oops. Okay, and just keep repeating that until you've got 20. So into the next one. First loop only, yarn over, pull through both loops. Now alternatively you could just chain 20 instead, but the reason I do this is because when we're working with our hats, we're going to work into these stitches, but then at the very end we're going to turn it over and work into these foundation stitches, and they're really easy to get into. So unless you're really confident that you can work into your chains again, I do recommend just giving this a go. So make sure you don't work into that vertical bar. Okay, just coming up to the last one to do, 20. Again, make sure we're skipping that little vertical bar there, going into that proper upside down V on the left hand side. Bring the yarn through, and we're still going to create the foundation chain even though we're not doing any more. So pull for the first loop only, do your single crochet. So we still do a normal foundation stitch at the end, even though we're not going to be working into that last stitch. Okay, so there we go, we've got 20 single crochet foundation stitches. Okay, then what we're going to do is making sure that your yarn is at the top here. We're going to fold our little chains, make sure they're not twisted and they're all facing the right direction. And you want to make sure that that's at the top and that you're folding it round like this, and find the first single crochet foundation stitch. Don't confuse it with these little chains. You want to find that first proper stitch. I'm going to put our hook into there, going under both bits of yarn, and because we've kept this at the top, it's in the right position. Get our tail end out of the way, and we're just going to bring our yarn through that first single crochet and straight through the loop on our hook, and that joins our little project to make a little loop like so. Okay, joined at the beginning and the end, and you should still have a stitch count of 20. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to create the hat part, and then at the end we come back and make the brim. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to chain 1. Don't count that as a stitch though, just ignore that as a stitch, and going back into that first single crochet, the one we just slip stitched into, go back into there, and we're going to do a single crochet. Okay, 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet, and we're going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So just go into the next stitch and do a single crochet. Like I said, this pattern's in US terminology. Go to the next stitch and do 1 single crochet. I'm going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch around, keeping a stitch count of 20. Okay, 18, 19, and the last one, 20. So it helps to count as you go because it can look like there's another stitch after that last one there. There's the first proper one. That's actually our slip stitch, so don't get confused with that stitch there. Right next to it is our little chain 1, which should help you to recognize that to be ignored. So skip that, skip your chain 1, find your first proper single crochet, hook into there and do a little slip stitch. Okay, you should still have a stitch count of 20. Okay, and it should look like a little band. And then what we're going to do is we're going to move on to round 3. And we're going to reduce our stitch count down from 20 down to 13. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to chain 1. Again, don't count that as a stitch. And starting in the same stitch that you just slip stitched into, we're going to single crochet 2 stitches together to do a decrease. So go into that first single crochet, the one you just slip stitched into, and bring the yarn through as if doing a normal single crochet, but stop and go into the next stitch and bring the yarn through. You end up with 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3. And as you can see, that's reduced 2 stitches down to just the 1. And then what we're going to do though, in the next stitch, we're just going to do 1 single crochet. Just 1 single crochet. We're going to repeat that pattern all the way around. So we're going to single crochet 2 together, then do 1 single crochet. Then you single crochet 2 together, then you do 1 single crochet. Back to the beginning, but you'll end on 2 single crochet, okay? You won't end on 1 single crochet. So the next 2 is single crochet 2 together. Stop. So the next stitch, pull through, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3. Then we do 1 single crochet. Then we go back to single crochet 2 together. Next stitch, pull through, stop. Next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Then 1 single crochet in the next stitch. Just repeat that round. Single crochet 2 together. One single crochet. Single crochet 2 together. One single crochet, single crochet 2 together, then 1 single crochet. Then you should have 2 stitches left, don't confuse it with that trick one, 2 left, and we'll single crochet those 2 together. So you end on single crocheting 2 stitches together, like so. And there's our fake stitch. So we skip our fake stitch, skip our chain 1, find your first proper stitch. My lighting is going all yellow for some reason. Put your hook into there and do a little slip stitch. And your stitch count should have gone down to 13. Okay, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 rounds. Rounds 4 and 5 of just chain 1, don't count that as a stitch. Starting in the same stitch you just slip stitched into, we do 1 single crochet. And we're just going to do 1 single crochet into each stitch around. Okay, and so you're keeping a stitch count of 13, just doing 1 single crochet in each stitch around. And we're going to do that for 2 rounds. Okay, 2 rounds. So you chain 1, starting in the same stitch you slip stitched into, do 1 single crochet into each stitch around and slip stitch in that first single crochet. I'm going to do that for 2 rounds. Okay. There's our last stitch for that round. Don't get tricked by the fake stitch, skip the fake stitch, skip the chain 1, find that first proper single crochet and do a slip stitch, and then we do our second round. Same thing again, chain 1, starting in that same stitch we slip stitched into, do 1 single crochet. Do 1 single crochet in each stitch around, keeping a stitch count of 13. That's 2, 12 and 13. Okay, Okay, so we've done 1 single crochet in each stitch around. We've done that for 2 rounds. Again, make sure you skip that fake stitch, skip your chain 1, find that first proper stitch, first single crochet. Oops. Go into it properly, do a little slip stitch. So you should still have a stitch count of 13 by the end of that round. And it should look a little something like this. You can see it's starting to get its cone shape. Then what we're going to do is we are going to do a decrease round. We're going to get our stitch count from 13 down to 9. So we're going to start off with chain 1, same as before. This time we're going to do 1 single crochet in the same stitch we just slip stitched into. Let's get back into there. Do 1 single crochet. Then we're going to single crochet 2 together. Let's go into the next stitch, pull through. The next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. Okay, we're going to repeat that pattern round. Do 1 single crochet in the next stitch, just 1 single crochet, then we single crochet 2 together. We just repeat this to the last stitch. Crochet 2 together, then we do 1 single crochet, and we single crochet 2 stitches together. If it helps, I'm flattening my work as I do this, making sure not to go into the other side. Okay, and then 1 single crochet, then single crochet 2 together, then back to the beginning. There's our last stitch, so you should have 1 stitch remaining, and in that last stitch we're just doing 1 single crochet. You can tell I'm back at the beginning because we've got this slight line here. Then again, there's a little fake stitch, which is quite small this time. Chain 1's disappeared. Find your first proper stitch and slip stitch into there. Your stitch count should have gone down to 9. Okay, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 hidden under our yarn. Okay, and then what we're going to do 2 rounds again of just 1 single crochet in each stitch around. So keeping a stitch count of 9, we're going to chain 1. Again, starting in the same stitch you just slip stitched into. We do 1 single crochet, and we do 1 single crochet in each stitch around, keeping a stitch count of 9. We're going to do that for 2 rounds. Okay, 2 rounds again. Coming up to the last 2 on the last round. 8, and the last one 9. Okay, then there's a little fixed stitch, chain 1, well that's just disappeared. Find your first single crochet and slip stitch into there. It's starting to get a little bit fiddly. You should still have a stitch count of 9. Okay, so we've done 1 single crochet in each stitch around. We've done that for 2 rounds again. Okay, then we're going to move on to our last decrease round. We're going to reduce our stitch count down from 9 down to 5. Okay, so we're going to chain 1. This is probably the most fiddliest of rounds. Chain 1. And we're going to start off in the same stitch we just slip stitched into. We're going to single crochet 2 together. So starting in there, bring the yarn through, stop into the next stitch, bring the yarn through, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Okay, and we're going to just single crochet 2 stitches together all the way around up to the last stitch. So into the next stitch, bring the yarn through, stop. Next stitch, bring the yarn through, yarn over, pull for all 3. So then 5 and 6 we're crocheting together. So next stitch, bring the yarn through to the next stitch, bring the yarn through, yarn over, pull through all 3. 7 and 8 crochet together, so the next stitch, pull through to the next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. I've lost that one. No. Let's try that one again. It's the joys of crocheting on camera. And there we go. And that should leave you with 1 stitch. You can see there, we do 1 single crochet in that last stitch. And then if you can, and it helps to bring up your yarn a bit, move over and slip stitch into that first single crochet. And then when you can just tighten your yarn once your hook's in, then bring the yarn through straight for the loop on your hook. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do one more round, if you can squeeze in another round of just 1 single crochet in each stitch around. So we're going to chain 1 again, starting in the same stitch you just slip stitch into, going to do a single crochet, do 1 single crochet in each stitch around. You should have a stitch count of 5, so 1 helps to count as you go, next stitch 2, next stitch 3, next stitch 4, next stitch 5. Okay, and then again, if you can, there's our little fake stitch. Chain 1's really small. Find your first single crochet, helps to bring up your loop so you can reach over. You hook into the first single crochet, then tighten your yarn and do a slip stitch. And that's it for the top of the hat, you'll be pleased to know. So we're going to put that down and then just cut your yarn. And just bring that through. And to finish off the top of the yarn, top of the hat, we're going to thread our tail end onto our yarn needle. And we're just going to drawstring the remaining hole closed. There's still a little bit of a gap at the top there, so we're just going to go into the next stitch and out for the next. And pull, and do the same thing going to the next, out the next. You may not be able to see it exactly, but just sew like this until it just pulls in that hole. Then we'll go into the next, move over a bit and go up for the middle, and then you should have a fairly good point to the end of your hat. I think this grey yarn's a bit thicker than my black yarn, but it still works. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to sew to the inside, but when you do, don't pull too tightly. Just want to just bring that gently, then stop, because you don't want to pull down the top of your hat. Okay, so there's the basic cone shape of our hat. We just put all our tail ends in there. This one tail end at the beginning, I'm just going to sew over. Let's take this beginning tail end, sew back the back very nice, and I'm just going to sew over to that first stitch there, just to neaten that off, tighten that gap, then just sew down on the inside to secure that tail end. Now I'm just going to put that on the inside. Okay, so there's the basic cone shape, and now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the brim. And the reason I do it this way rather than starting at the brim is because it creates a more sort of slightly better shape for the hat. So you could effectively just start off with 40, because we end up with a stitch count of 40 on this brim. So you could effectively start off with a working 40 single crochet foundation stitches, or chaining 40, creating a joining it at the beginning and the end, slip stitching into the first chain, so chain 40 and then working 1 single crochet in each stitch around, then decrease up, but it will create a much bigger brim. So this way it does work a little bit better. So what we're going to do now is we're going to find our first stitch on here, these foundation stitches, and because we did foundation stitches we've got proper, nice big proper stitches to work into. So find the first one as best you can, like so, going onto 2 bits of yarn. We're going to rejoin our grey, so bring that through. I'm just going to secure that with a chain 1, but don't count that as a stitch. Secure that with chain 1, you can just pull that nice and tight and that disappears. And going back into the same stitch again, we're going to do 2 single crochet. Okay, 2 single crochet. So 1, and back into the same stitch again, 2. We do 2 single crochet. We're going to do 2 single crochet into each stitch around. So we're going to go into the next one. Okay, we're going under that little V there. Do 2 single crochet in the next stitch, and your stitch count should go from 20, because we've got 20 stitches here, to 40. Okay, so you might want to count as you go so you know when you get to the end. So just work 2 single crochet into each foundation stitch around. 2 single crochet, so you've got a stitch count of 40, you're doubling up. So 6, 7 and 8 the next one, 7 and back into the same stitch, 8, then 9 and 10 in the next one. Coming near the end, 37 and 38, 37, 38, 39 and 40. Okay, so done 2 single crochet in each stitch around, creating a little brim like so. And then what you want to do is skip that little chain 1 which disappeared, find your first single crochet just like before and slip stitch into there. Just join the round like so. Then what we're going to do is we're going to cut our yarn, just pull the tail end through, and we're just going to sew that, neaten that off and sew it to the back. Let's go into that same stitch to the back, and then sew over a little bit. And you may even choose to tie it with the beginning tail end when you rejoin the yarn. There we go, and just pop those on the inside of your hat. And there we go, that's created a very gentle brim that's not too big by doing that. And there we go, there is the basic hat shape, and obviously you would have made this in black, like so. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make the little the buckles. So we're going to take a little bit of purple. So to take a short length of purple, and all we're going to do with that is we're going to chain 20, so it's the same amount of our foundation stitches around here. We're going to chain 20. Let's take your purple and chain 20. Try and keep it as neatly as you can. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 18, 19 and 20. So chain 20, then just pull, if you haven't cut your yarn and then pull it through. So you should have chain 20 like so. We're just going to put that down for a second, and we're going to make our little buckle. So take a short length of your yellow, and with your yellow we're going to chain 7. Okay, we're going to chain 7. Little slips, chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7. So chain 7, and what we're going to do is we're going to do a half double crochet, just 1 half double crochet, and we're going to do that in the, so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th chain from your hook. So don't count the loop on your hook, count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in that 5th chain from your hook, yarn over, go into that 5th chain, and do a half double crochet. So you've got 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3. Then we're going to chain 1, just chain 1, and we're going to do a half double crochet in that first chain. So chain 1, then yarn over, skip 1 chain, and then in the last chain, I'm running out of yarn, might want to cut a little bit longer, go into that first chain, bring the yarn through, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops to complete. Then just cut your yarn, or in my case run out of yarn, and just bring the yarn through. Okay, and what that does, it creates a little buckle. You should have 2, whoops, not the camera, sorry, 2 gaps, gap there and a little gap there. We're going to feed our chains through the gaps. So I'm just going to have to pause there because I'm running out of time on this camera and get another battery. Okay, so with a renewed battery, what we're going to do is we're going to take the shorter tail end of our purple and thread it onto our tapestry needle, and taking your little buckle like here with these 2 ends here, find that first gap, the one where we skipped and did a chain 1, so that little chain 1 space in between there. We're going to thread our strap, our chains through there, and don't pull them all the way through though, just stop there. Then find this second gap between your end chains and that first half double crochet, bring that through as well, like so. You can start to see the buckle taking effect. The next thing to do is to sort out these tail ends. And what we want to do with these tail ends is just turn it over, and we're going to tie these together basically. Going to tie them together on the back, do a double knot, nice and tight, and then we can trim these down. You don't have to tie them off perfectly because they'll be hidden on the back of your buckle, hopefully. There we go. The next thing to do, tuck that to the back, next thing to do is we are going to get our little hats and just place that. You do a neater job than me of hiding that tail end. And then get this in focus. There we go, just wrapping that around our hat and holding that end in place. Get this end thread it onto our yarn needle, and we're just going to sew it through that first chain like so, and just make sure that's in position and all facing the right direction, and you're happy with that. Then what you can do is just sew to the inside and secure it in place, and the same for the other tail end. I'm going to sew that to the inside as well, and then turn that inside out, tie those together, do a little double knot, so trim them down if you want to, but you can just tuck them on the inside of your hat, up there. And there we go, there is our little buckle. You may want to sew that into place if you want to, and do a neater job of that yellow tail end, which is now not hiding on the inside. But I'm rushing because of the camera. And there is our little witch's hat, like so. But of course, if you make him in black, he'll look even more like a little witch's hat. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. I hope you managed to follow along, and I hope you give the foundation stitch a try as well, because it will make your life easier when working the brim. But you can, if you want to, just chain 20, work the same stitches as here. You will need to do, if you just chain 20, you will need to do an extra round of one single crochet in each stitch around, because obviously when you do the single crochet foundation stitch you get that extra round of single crochets. And just make sure that you can see the chains when you need to work into them again. But hopefully you'll give the foundation stitch a try, which will make it easier in the long run. But I hope you enjoyed that last Halloween special, and maybe next year we can make one of these life size for a child to wear, so we'll see. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon for some more crochet fun. Cheers guys, bye.